Hey, Trevor, congratulations, man.
Thank you so much, my friend, and good morning to you.
Good morning. The wine is
So-
awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. Well,
And you have it in your glass right now.
I have it in my glass right now, of course.
Listen, so tell me how it happened. Like I remember when I tasted the wine way back in, I guess it was in March or May, and I was really astounded. I loved the balance and intensity of the wine, and I remember we were discussing it then. But let's go over it again. How did it happen? How did you make such a fantastic wine?
So yeah, well, obviously, thank you for this incredible honor, and for saying what you just said. It was a phenomenal vintage from grape to bottle. I think it started with just a fantastic growing season, right? So quite a bit of rain in the winter time that actually came into the spring, and so we were able to achieve a solid amount of soil moisture. Then we had a really long, warm summer, right? So great growing season. That said, not a lot of heat spikes or anything really out of the ordinary, and we were able to extend the hang time pretty late into the season. And if there's ever such thing as a relatively leisurely harvest, I'd say that 2019 is definitely one of those, because I was able to allow every single block to hang just as long as I wanted it to. So definitely started.
How was it different than 18 then?
So
18 is a great year too.
18 was an incredible growing season as well. I'd say we probably, particularly in Rutherford, we had a little bit more fog that went late into the morning. So it kept those temperatures relatively cool, which is one of the reasons that I think we see such great acidity across the board in the 19s. And that's one of my favorite things about this wine. It's very, very balanced. It's an elegant expression of private reserve. And it does remind me of many of those great vintages of the 60s and 70s. So definitely started with Mother Nature, and then we gave it a lot of TLC, of course, once the fruit arrived at the winery, utilizing our optical sorting system, just the right balance of barrel fermentation. Another really interesting thing about this wine, though, is that it is the highest level of Petit Verdot that I've ever used.
Wow.
In fact, that has ever been used in private reserve in general at 9%.
What's the 9%?
It's 9% Petit Verdot, 91% Cabernet Sauvignon. And so that is the highest level of Petit that we've ever used.
Interesting.
And it was a phenomenal year for our Petit, particularly in the Rutherford district. Just incredible color, really, really interesting aromatic expression. And even just a little bit went a very long way. And it was one of those things where, we were going through our many months of bench trials, putting the blend together. And every time we would dose with just a little bit more Petit Verdot, we'd look at each other and say, wow, this is incredible. And this is something I think we can kind of maximize in this year in particular.
And the Petit Verdot would give you more freshness, right, in the wine?
Freshness. Definitely some nice structure. Petit, it's one of those varietals that you have to be careful because it can have very aggressive tannins, depending on the growing season. But that color, that floral element that it adds to the nose, that blue fruit expression. So there's this really interesting blueberry and violet character that was adding to the blend. And the tannins were, soft enough to where they married very, very well with the Cabernet. So it was kind of a perfect combination for us.
But also, I could see just as of recent, remind me again what was your first vintage?
2017 was my first vintage grape bottle. Yeah.
And you definitely right away. Well, I think that 19 really shows it, how you dialed back a lot of things, and you were going for you really are going for something much more transparent and really showing the great character that your incredible vineyards can deliver.
Well, thanks, James. Thanks so much for saying that. And I've definitely been set up for success by my predecessors. There have been some really great things happening in the vineyard. And one of the adjustments that we've been making in recent years is to leave a little bit more of a canopy. And I think that's become really important, particularly with warmer temperatures in the summertime that we've seen, certainly in recent vintages. And this allows, the grapes to retain that higher level of acidity, a little bit more freshness, and allows me to extend the growing season without raisening. So that's been really, really key. The other thing is just adjusting the level of barrel fermentation. We've actually dialed that down a little bit to make sure that we're maximizing that expression of terroir, which is our greatest asset.
And when you think back to the great classic BV Private Reserve, George de Latour, like, what do you think about, like, are there any comparisons that were, like, in your mind when you taste 19? Are you thinking, wow, I hope it turns out like what vintage?
Yeah, well, so
I mean, you're lucky, by the way, you can do that, right? Hardly
yeah.
anyone in California can do that.
Right. No, I know. Well, for me, my favorite back vintage of all time personally was the 1968. And I know I've shared this with you before, but that was actually my aha wine in the business. And so I was able to taste it when I was about 19 years old for the first time at a family friend's home. And this was, during a competitive tasting, and it was 1968 Napa Valley. That was the theme. And I got to try some amazing wines from this legendary vintage. And it was the 68 Private Reserve that blew me away. And for the first time in my life, I looked at a wine and said, wow, I cannot believe that wine can do that. And it truly was. And then, here we are all these years later, and I'm lucky enough to be the steward of this amazing place. And so I do compare a lot of things to that high bar of the 1968. I think certainly viticulture practices would have been different back then, winemaking practices, et cetera. But there's this freshness, and that wine was still very alive in 2001 when I first tasted it, and it still is today. And that is one of the things that I really appreciate about the 19. It's just this incredible elegance and this freshness and amazing expression of Rutherford terroir.
Luckily enough, I had a 70 last week.
Oh, nice.
Right before I was, we were deciding on wine of the year and writing the story. It was right before, and it was just like, wow. And really, I think that, like you said, even those wines today, sure, they're old and mature now, but there's still a wonderful freshness and harmony to them. Yeah, and I think that your wine has that. That's what really impressed me from the beginning. I think you remember, when I was tasting, and I was just like, wow, this is incredible. We had a long conversation. Well, listen, thanks again. It was amazing to talk to you, and I look forward to drinking a bottle of that with you when I'm back in Napa for Napa Premier. That would be awesome.
Thanks so much, James. And this is, again, such an incredible honor. And, myself and my team are just over the moon. And we'll definitely share a bottle of the 19 as well as a bottle of that 1974, which I have not.
That'd be awesome. I can't wait. Well, thanks again, Trevor, and congratulations. And everyone at jamessuckling.com loves that wine. So
thank you, James. Thank you so much.
Okay, buddy. All the best.
Right. Talk to you soon.